Hi everybody, I'm Phil Fatica and welcome back. Today our guest is from the Erie Historical Society. They've got great things going on just for you. Let's say hello to Caleb Pfeiffer. We're going to call him Cal. He is the Executive Director of the Erie Historical Society. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I love this here. We'll talk about the Thomas B. Hagen History Center in just a moment. You're reorganizing. You're alive and well. They got the right man in charge. And everything's going forward.
But,
I do.
It's been an interesting time.
I'll bet it has. Let's talk about this now, the History Center, the Tom Hagen History Center. First of all, named after Tom Hagen. Why?
You know, we'd be hard-pressed to find someone in the community who was not only more knowledgeable about the region's history, but passionate, has put his own money behind projects and historical preservation. Just a fitting person to name it after.
Okay. So, what goes on there? Why this? And by the way, where's it going to be located?
That's going to be at the what folks know as the Watson-Curtsey Mansion on West 6th Street and Chestnut. And what happened was about 2 years ago, the organization started planning its next home. We had sold our headquarters building that had been in operation since 1991, the History Center on State Street, 419 State Street. Yep. And the cashier's house next door at 417 State. Sold to the Erie Art Museum as part of their expansion in 2011. So the question was where to go to. And after doing about 6 months of evaluating and looking at different options, all roads led to the Watson-Curtsey Mansion. We had the space there. We had vacant land. Behind the mansion on West 5th Street, 6 vacant lots.
So it's going to be a separate building?
Correct.
Okay.
It's, and that's really why it's, we've referred to it as a historical campus, because the planetarium, which folks know has been there since the 1950s, 59, that was donated to Penn State Barron to free up the carriage house. So you have a 5,000 square foot carriage house. You have a 10,000 square foot brand new construction pre-engineered building on West 5th Street. And then you have the 15,000 square foot mansion that will have thematic galleries on the 2nd and 3rd floor. So it will be, for the first time in Erie's history, a singular location to access our history, whether it be museum exhibits or the library and the archives, which we could talk about a little bit later.
Oh, absolutely. I applaud that. Exactly. I have a book that I grabbed out of the Erie County Library. It's called Historic Erie County, on this one, and it is published by the Erie County Historical Society. So you have your fingers on this, on the fingerprint in this book here, and it's you can find this in the public library. Most interesting. I believe Ed Welligis helped collate, write some of the material, and it is today, jump ahead just a bit, there is a discussion taking place about the historical preservation of certain places, actual buildings and or in some instances bridges, which is in the news a lot lately. And there is always the two sides of that, and I'm not asking you to weigh in. That would be a little bit too dangerous there. But the Historical Preservation Society has been involved in that, and towards what was the conversation that you've been involved in?
You know, it's interesting. You know, the term historical preservation, people are somewhat familiar with it here in Erie, but it is not a conversation that has been had at this level, I think, in recent years. There's been a preservation movement afoot since the early 1980s, and it sort of ebbed and it's flowed, and but there's been a resurgence in the last few years as we've seen homes and buildings, and particularly in our two historic districts that have come down, and the Historical Society has been much more vocal and active, talking about it. You know, it's not something that is a conversation that is taking place in other communities at the basic level that we're having. It would, if I had to draw an analogy, it would be like in the 70s and the 80s, cities having conversations about green space again and saying city parks are a good thing. Well, now in 2015, cities aren't doing that. We generally accept that having green space as communities are a good thing. So we need to elevate.
But your generation, I believe, motivated that. Earth Day became more than just a nice day to celebrate. Why? Oh yeah, it's Earth Day. It's become part of your DNA culture that these green spaces are there. Am I correct in saying that? As opposed to my generation.
Oh, absolutely. It was, generationally, there was different forms of urban planning from your generation and the way that we treated cities, and we saw a lot of the leaving of our city core to the suburbs, and now we're seeing the opposite with my own generation.
Wanting to come back.
So
what the advantages of the cities gives.
Very similar, to historic preservation. It's a part of maintaining a city's core, that authenticity. So what we need to do in Erie is we need to make sure that we have the right protections in place, which we have very few of, for our historic buildings. And that's what surprises a lot of people. Watson-Curtsey Mansion is on the National Register for Historic Places. It's a great example, though, because if the society went bankrupt tomorrow, someone could come along, buy the building, knock it down, and put up anything they wanted. And there are zero protections to protect that property.
How do you change that?
That would happen through local ordinances. So in this case, it would be at the City of Erie level. In the other municipalities, Millcreek would be the same way. And each community would have to weigh in and say, what is sacred? What do we see as valuable? But again, there's communities, sure, that are having a debate about preservation, but it's on a different level than we are. They're arguing about other aspects of it. We're sort of having a discussion in this community still that other communities have dealt with 20 years ago.
Okay.
So it's time to advance the ball and make sure that we're able to maintain at least our most historic core of the city.
And some conversations have taken place with religious group. Nuns have preserving, let's say, Little Italy, quote unquote. They seem to have sprung that upon themselves. It's our job to make sure that this does not go away. This is very important. This is extreme. I would tend to think that too, people are becoming, television has done this, interested in their heritage, their ancestry. And that's part of, I don't want that to go away because my mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa were a part of that. I don't want, you leave that in place and spruce it up too, Cal, and make it look better. So thank you for this, Cal, because it's about time we've done this, Cal.
Well, it's, what they say about history, particularly public history, which is what we interpret. There's nothing more personal than one's own history, whether it's their family, the company that they worked. So that's what we find are what folks are most interested in. They're interested in ethnic heritage, their own genealogy, and you're absolutely right. Television has played a major role in that. Certainly this station and PBS and tracing one's roots. Which we have a sister organization that gives classes on how to do genealogy. So it's definitely something that is alive and well and on people's minds.
Let's go back to the Hagen History Center there. You are rebranding the organization. How so? What do you mean by that?
We are not just moving to a new headquarters facility, but we're going to have a new variation of our name, a new graphic logo. So it couldn't be more new. We'll be launching a new website. We have a subsidiary website that we just launched for the historic properties for people to use for weddings and special events. So it's all a way, as funny as it sounds, to modernize the Historical Society. There's a reason why they call it the Historical Society.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's terrific. How did you get involved in doing this? Were you a major of that in college, or would you just kind of find that your progress through your work experiences led you more and more to, I like this, I think I want to do, that looks really appealing?
You know, I was told so many times, Phil, that I act like an old man. I just decided to own it and go into the field, you know?
You're not. You don't look a day over 21.
Well, actually, my background was in maritime history, and what brought me back to Erie was the flagship Niagara, and spent a few years working there, and then opportunity came up to lead the Historical Society, which was, I thought, just an incredible opportunity to take the organization forward, and the history for this region is so incredibly rich. And that sounds like a cliche, of course, when you run the Historical Society, but when you really delve into it and you see all the different things that Erie has been a part of and led, the industries that we've been #1 in through, you know, decades of time. I mean, the #1 producer of baby carriages and boilers, and, you know, I could rattle off a whole, you know, list of different, you know, esoteric. It just is exciting, and it's exceptional for a city that's always been relatively small.
Are we ever going to regain that, or is it just going to be in a different form? Technology races ahead so rapidly we can't afford it in some instances. I don't think, and I don't want to make a really strong political statement, but I'm not sure that East or West 12th Street is going to spring up with manufacturing jobs, 400 people working in a plant. I don't think that's going to happen, at least not in my lifetime. Maybe the components of the building will be given over to 15 or 20 people working in certain jobs, or even a technology electronically on the web or whatever. What is your take on that?
You know, it's interesting, you know, both through the society and trying to be forward-looking as an organization, and honestly a younger member of this community. I think that the jury is out of how we head in Erie. I mean, I don't subscribe to the idea that manufacturing shouldn't be part of the mix going forward. That's certainly not what other communities that are like Erie, that are developing and redeveloping their modern manufacturing around the country, are doing. But do we have the proper business climate to support that, both in the region and across the state? That's what scares me and keeps me up at night.
This is Cal Pfeiffer. He is the, well, what do you tell him? You are the chief cook and bottle washer?
Wearer of many hats.
Okay, wearer of many hats, but specifically the executive director of the Erie Historical Society. Your website, your phone number, people would like to help you. Do you accept volunteers? How do you raise money? How do you keep going? You got about a day and a half to answer all that.
We're 100% privately funded. We don't receive any government funding. So the project that we're talking about at the Hagen History Center, $3.5 million, all private money, not a cent of taxpayer money. So we're member supported. We have members. We're always looking for new members and certainly new volunteers. We have a lot of fascinating volunteer opportunities where people can delve into the archives and the collections that we have. ErieCountyHistory.org, we're online.
ErieCountyHistory.org. One word, Erie County History. Yeah.
.org, and then folks can always call us as well. They can speak to me directly. I always love chatting with people from the community.
Phone number?
454-1813. What's significant? 1813.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Extension or anything there? Or?
My extension is 25. More than welcome to call me and could chat about not just volunteer opportunities, but we're pretty responsive to different ideas that people have. Perfect example right now as this program airs, we'll be staging a tour of East East Side Erie ethnic social clubs. There was a lot of interest in the ethnic social history,
sure.
So we put it together, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
You got the Minushko, you've got the Polish Falcons,
Yeah.
you just keep
The
going.
sharpshooters.
Sharpshooters, and that was a part of my parents' generation, not so much a part of me, and I don't know if it's a part of you or not, but they're still there, they're still very strong, and they still hold a very core audience, and thank you for doing that. It's a part of who we are.
Well, there's curiosity. We did it in response to market demand, if you will. People want to check out the clubs.
Oh, absolutely. The Kelly Club, Nuova Aurora, oh, they're everywhere. Outside of this, outside of the Hagen History Center, some of the other initiatives that you have, that you've mentioned some, but don't be afraid to mention them again, because you have lots of great things going on. Toot your horn, it's time.
We just acquired a Water Authority boat in the last 6 months.
Really?
It's a Lund-built, close to 40 feet long, all wood, absolutely gorgeous. Hard to believe that it was for utilitarian purposes.
Yeah.
It looks like a private yacht, and we'll be restoring that over the next year to 2 years.
Wow.
We will be continuing to offer our large-scale tours, so we'll be offering a tour of downtown again in September that will not only showcase historical architecture, but we're going to partner with Erie Insurance, and they're going to open up a lot of their new buildings that folks have been reading about, their multi-million-dollar technical learning center. I think people will be really impressed with what's happening in downtown. So those are, some of the initiatives coming down the pipeline. Some of the other things that are ongoing that folks are always surprised to know. When we talk about the archives and we say you could come to the reading room and access it, folks really don't know what's there. And if you stretched it end to end, we have over 4 miles of archives, of linear feet.
Wow. So
you can think of a company, and we have the archives or information about photos, Kohler beer, Nagel boiler, different families, the Millcreek flood, you name it. And what folks can do is they can sit and flip through the original source material. It's not behind glass. You can pick up actual letters from the founders of Erie.
Oh, that's even better.
Old court cases. I mean, for people that are interested in history, it doesn't get any better.
I'm looking through this book that you published, Historic Erie County, and I was trying to find that photos or whatever on Kohler beer, but certainly almost everything else is there. All the institutions that have made up Erie County for all these many, many years, the waterworks, Palaka's Chocolates,
a lot of
the YMCA,
a lot of exactly the
Jet
Y.
Broadcasting, an institution with Myron Jones and Mercyhurst, and of course Gannon and everything that takes place, and still when people come to town, they still love to go out on West 6th and look at Millionaires Row.
Right.
They've been maintained. You like that? I mean, they're not.
It's
for the most part,
they've been maintained. It's an incredible historic corridor, something that I can't commit to a timeline for it, but something that's coming down the pike is signage for West 6th, so that folks not only know they're in a historic district, but they can see who built the house, the years, etc.
Yeah, that's really nice. I think that was a long time coming into downtown Erie, that the signage, and did that come from the state, or do you have to petition the state to do that?
If you get the official state signs, we're actually going to do it on our own and do local signs similar to the signage that's on Presque Isle.
Okay.
It's expensive.
Sure is.
But it's worth it to do there.
I'm looking through this other magazine that I grabbed out of the library in anticipation of you being here today, and it headlines it's the headline page of that particular date in time from 1888 to 1988. And I want to take it all the way up to 1988. That would be the last one that they did. And this was Market Reels under huge sell-off. Jessica's freed from the abandoned well. I remember that reporting when I was on the news, very much so. So there's a great deal to be had about what we were and what we've become by simply going to the library and finding this particular literature, which the Historical Society is behind. This one simply, as I fold it in front of you here, it's just called Front Pages. front pages. This is the one, though, that really you drove, and this was historic Erie County. Let's move out of the city. Let's move to Edinburgh. Let's go to Waterford. Let's go to Wattsburg, and let's go to those areas. What is going on there? They've pretty much maintained their stability, I think. Corey, the only other city in Erie County, is Corey. And I know some of these places struggle, and yet they still manage to maintain the sense and the roots of who they were, who they are, and who they will be. Fair to say that?
I would say so. There's a tremendous amount of pride in the communities throughout the county, an acknowledgement of their history. They all have smaller local historical societies that are embedded into the town. And sometimes they have a building, sometimes not. It was important to us in the new museum at the Hagen History Center to have at least one exhibit gallery dedicated to the different communities throughout the county. So it's a rotating gallery, and we're going to start off, the first community interpreted will be Northeast.
Okay.
But it's amazing when you look at their history where they, what industry they sort of hung their hat on. If, Union City, the chair making and the furniture industry. Corey, its roots go back to the oil industry and supporting, Oil City and Titusville. So there's a tremendous amount of diversity for a county that is the stories. I think people will really be surprised outside of the city. Waterford and the colonial history, George Washington.
Leads me to the next question then, is do the schools, not just Erie County, but everywhere, do the schools at the elementary level and middle school and high school, do they kind of skip over that? Is that not part of the curriculum anymore, or is it still there? Here's who we are, and the kids will go, no, this is just so boring. I don't want to do this. Come on. They're living history, of course, but they don't understand that yet. Are the schools doing pretty good with that, or in your opinion, they might be able to do a little bit better?
I think a lot of pressure is being put on the schools, certainly with
to do everything.
The STEM and a lot of math and science, and less focus on history, and particularly local history. But that's a vital role that we can play to partner with the schools. We just developed educational trunks that we can take directly to the schools. We were starting to get feedback that a lot of them had field trip budgets zeroed out and said, well, we can't do local history anymore. So this is our attempt to say, well, we'll come to you.
Great.
It's important. It's a little personal example. I remember visiting the Historical Society when I was in the 4th grade.
Okay. Which is only a couple of years ago.
Ridgefield Elementary 5 years ago. Yeah, you're right. Never in a billion years, we're working for it, but it matters. I mean, that's where the spark and the passion starts when they're kids.
Yeah. Do bigger cities, New York, Chicago, LA, I don't know, do they seem to be ahead of us in this? Because they have a lot of private money there, and they seem to be able to grasp onto this and come and say, we're not going to let this go away. I'm thinking of the High Line, the road, the track that was deteriorating and just, it was lousy.
Are you baiting me to talk about the bridge?
No, I'm not. I'm not baiting you to talk about the bridge. I'm saying it's difficult in smaller communities to go find that money to get these things accomplished. You have to perhaps implant in people's minds just how important this is. I don't know.
No.
Okay, I'm not baiting you.
No, that is an important thing to talk about, and every public opportunity I talk about this.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the size of community.
All right.
It does, but there's something very unique in Erie, and I don't know, I can, have my own guesses, but outside of the Erie Community Foundation, we don't have another, we've got a couple of very small family foundations that do great work, but they don't have staffs, websites, formalized giving priorities. That's unique for a community of this size. Jamestown, New York, right across the border, city of 30,000 people, has 4 of those, the way I just described.
Wow.
Cuyahoga County, we know Cleveland's bigger,
Sure.
not that much bigger. It's not one of the top 10 largest cities in the country.
No.
1,000 foundations in Cuyahoga County. what happened historically that we had the pockets of wealth here. We had the incredibly successful companies, but we didn't have the foundations and some of the philanthropy to be set up with it. Remains to be seen. It's important to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, we're not going to change. You know, when William Scott died in 1891, his fortune was estimated to be $30 million.
That's big money, no matter when it was.
If he would have taken half of that, just as an example, and put that into a foundation with market value and interest for today, it would be worth over $1 billion. What would $1 billion foundation do to the Erie region today?
I know you'd know what to do with it, for sure. As you can see behind us, this is a sketch drawing of the Thomas B. Hagen History Center, 356 West 6th, right at the, well, you tell them, where's it located?
Right at the corner of Chestnut, so it's essentially literally in the middle of the historic district, which is bookended between Perry Square and Gridley Park. We're going to have our soft opening in the spring, but we won't have the grand opening with the new exhibits until the fall. Folks can, I think, expect to have a fascinating experience when they visit the museum, and then they should definitely stop into the reading room, which we talked about, where they will access the archives, or can access the archives, all one location, and we're excited about it.
Cal, we got about 2 minutes left, and it's all yours. You're on that camera if you want, or you can talk to me. Make your best pitch here for membership, for preservation, for interest, however you want to wrap it.
You know, I think that folks that are interested in history, which is there are so many of them out there, and even folks that say, well, you know, I have a preconceived notion. It's, you know, dry and boring names and dates. I really think they should give us a chance to become a member for just a year and see the vitality and the programs that we're doing, the lectures, the events. I think that they'll be surprised. I think they'll be interested, and I really hope that they'll find it worthwhile and valuable. Oh,
I know they will. Cal, thanks for being with us. Cal Pfeiffer, he is the Executive Director of the Erie Historical Society. Coming up, come on down to the Thomas B. Hagen History Center, 356 West 6th, 6th and Chestnut. Right at the museum, right behind. Is that correct?
It is. Thanks so much, Phil.
Thanks for having you, Cal. We appreciate it. And thanks to you for joining us, too. Until next time, I'm Phil Fatiga. Take care.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.